Welcome back, everybody. Please welcome writer-director Ronnie Sandhal. Oh, thank you, Ronnie. Ronnie, so glad you're here. When I introduced the film, I mentioned that this was a planned trilogy of films about sports. But what's striking to me is that this is the only one you chose to direct yourself. Why is it? What is it about this one that compelled you to direct it?
It felt like the film that needed me as a director. I can't direct everything I write because then I'll write too few films, and I have a lot of stories I want to tell. So I try to be quite, harsh on myself in the sense that I really want to know that I'm the best director possible for the film. And with Tigers, it felt like there's something that is so personal with it, but also the strangeness of the film kind of needed my strangeness. And I had the feeling that if I'm giving this one away, they will take away all the odd stuff. And I think it's so important for this film that, it's a film that should start with the guy screaming like a pig for 45 seconds.
We're used to seeing sports films where it's all about success and about winning, and we get swept up in that story, but your film just goes the opposite direction. It becomes like a nightmare. Was that all along your intention of going against the grain of what us are expecting from a sports film?
Yeah, I think that goes in a way for all of the three films, but maybe most of all with Tigers, that it's kind of, I'm trying to flip in the coin a bit on the idea of success. What is a success? I mean, is someone choosing what kind of life to live is also a kind of a success for me. And I had the sense that sometimes you can really feel that some films, you can feel with some films that the filmmakers really been frustrated with other films. Like, the ones who made Drive, you can feel that they had a problem with Fast and the Furious, and for me I've been frustrated about sports movies. That I'm interested in sports, but I've always felt that most films about sports don't really take advantage of how strange that world is. I mean, like the soccer world, that it's a world where you actually can put a price tag on someone. For me, who's interested in portraying different layers of capitalism, it's quite interesting with a world where you can actually say you're worth 1 million, you're worth a hamburger, and also with the toxic masculinity of it all. So I think it was just for me the sports world is like a buffet of topics and strange characters that you can Yeah, it's.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that stuff up, because when I was watching the film, I was caught up with the absurdity of the whole scenario. The fact that these characters are speaking about being sold and bought and gilded cages. Can you talk about? I mean, it is based on a true story, and this is real stuff. But it seems so absurd.
It is absurd. It's almost like a funhouse mirror of the society, yeah. I mean, this is how the world of elite sports is, and especially soccer. And of course, I had a great insight through the real Martin Benson, which over these years grew into a friend as well, where I could get in on the inside of this golden cage. And it's also like it's a world that is so extremely hidden. The door is really closed to the football world, the soccer world, and so it's his story is one of the very few that it actually leaked out.
This past Olympics, it was all headlines about mental illness and how athletes are being pushed to the brink. Is that something that, you know, that you've heard about for a while and is now coming to a boil? Or?
I mean, the timing of it all is kind of interesting because I've been working for a long time with this film. Actually, the start of it, to begin with, was many years ago when I released my first novel. There was this other young guy. I was 22 and he was 20. And that was Martin Benson who released his autobiography. And I was, at that time, just about to make my first short film. So I had absolutely no chance to make a feature at the time. But I told him that if you wait for me, when I'm good enough, and I can pull this off, I'll make your story into a film. And so he turned down all the other offers on the book and waited for me.
So you guys made a pact?
Yeah. A drunk pact.
And why do you think he agreed to like take a chance on you to wait all this time to make the story?
He asked me what I thought about the offers that had come in, and I explained why that would be terrible movies. And I told him that that my take would be to go for the brutal truth and to really try to not make this into a movie where you try to sugar things up. I mean, but I think also, I mean, it was also, I don't know, it was a drunk pact, and I think he just took a chance. But it's been in the back of my head, and that's really, even though it wasn't the first film of the trilogy, it was always, I mean, it started with that one. And then I wrote Borg vs. McEnroe, and then I figured I need a third one. Otherwise, I'm just a guy who makes a couple of sports films. So it's a trilogy, and now I'm never going to touch sport again.
Your visual take on the film, if you can elaborate on your approach, it feels like a horror film. You shoot it in low-key lighting, a take that we've never seen with a story like this. Can you talk about that?
I'm glad that you say that. Thank you. I mean, we talked a lot about the subjectivity of it all, both when it comes to the visual, but also the sound design, to really create that, that you're inside the head of Martin. And I think, when it also comes with the idea of using a bit longer lenses to really separate him from the world he's in. So also, of course, something about the, composition that try to, kind of put him.
He's always at the edges of the frame.
Yeah, to portray his loneliness in a way. And I think but the sound design is also is a big part of it, because I think it's the way we work with close-ups, for example. I think the sound design really helps the close-ups, and we talked. Already in the script, it's written. The sound design is kind of written for subjectivity.
The dominant color in the film is blue. It's washed in this, and we have the association of blue being blue and sad and depressed. Can you tell us about your cinematographer and you working in that design of the blue colors?
Yeah, I mean it also had to do with the fact that Inter is blue, so we didn't have a choice that it needed to be blue as a color, and I think it went quite well with this film to use that kind of blue where it's there's a lot of dirt in the colors to get this kind of deeper blue, and it's same with when it's red, it's kind of dirty red, and I think we also, I mean. One other big part of the visual language is the colored light, which is a very Italian thing. I mean, in Scandinavia, you would never see colored light, but since we were shooting in Italy, it felt like an opportunity to kind of really grasp that other kind of lighting, and also, of course, the physicality of it all. I mean, which also was a big part of the cinematography, that I wanted. I told my DOP the first time we met that I want this film to smell. You know, I want to smell the sweat. You know, you should have this very visceral, physical feeling of the movie.
But there is, you navigate this tightrope between glossy, there is kind of like this beautiful aspect to it, but then there's also this grit, which ties to the themes of the film. Can you talk about that, balancing the two opposites almost?
Yeah, I mean, with the soccer world, and maybe the world of celebrity in a way, there's there's the glamour, there are the big parties, there are the, you know, and on films, set pieces in a way. But there's also here, I mean, I wanted really to enter this world in you know, from Martin's perspective, and you know, for example, I think the best example of that is the big scene around the midpoint when he runs out on San Siro, the iconic arena of Inter, and you know, normally you would go for a grander shot there. You would go wider because you have the audience, you have the big shot of the arena. But I was also always telling my crew that no, this needs to be handheld. We need to run out with him. That's, you know, because this is the language of this film. Yes, we're going out in an arena with 80,000 people, but we're doing it with him. And that was always the perspective, the subjective perspective of this movie is so important.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that scene. That's the one where he first gets to play in San Siro. And normally in the sports film that we see, that is the most exciting, and it should be so thrilling. Instead is visually we're traumatized by the whole experience, and the psychological aspect of it, that was important for you to see, for us to feel it visually, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's for me, it's a very psychological movie. I mean, it's in all of these three films kind of, you know, centers around sport and psychology, but especially this one and this midpoint scene. I mean, it was always a tricky one because, as you say, in a normal film, this is the climax. You know, he makes his debut in the first team and everything is great. I wanted
this is what we all seek for in a sports movie. It's like the arrival to the big leagues.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Instead it becomes a nightmare.
Yeah, and I think that's also part of, you know, I wanted to achieve this kind of unpredictability with this movie that, you know, if we come to that situation already at halfway through the film, then you don't really know what's going to happen after that, because that's where movies end normally. So I wanted to have this feeling like, okay, so now what? And to kind of fold the film on midpoint. But I knew I had to achieve the sense of a dream turning into a nightmare at midpoint. So that was always a big struggle to find that. How do we make that transition within the scene? So we played a lot with, well, basically war elements. You know, the smoke, the drums, the kind of, and the idea of him being a soldier going out to war, and he's been preparing for this moment for so long, but he's not ready for it, and he's not like anything goes wrong out there. It just feels wrong, and there, of course, the sound design also. Is a big part of it. I mean, to create that kind of subjective feeling that I'm drowning. I mean, I told my composer that I wanted the music to say, I'm drowning, I'm drowning, I'm drowning, I'm drowning. Wow. So that's where the strings comes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another powerful scene for me, I actually got very emotional seeing it, is the breakup with his girlfriend, and the fact that his in an Italian restaurant and we hear an opera playing. Tell us about that scene.
Yeah, I wanted to create a breakup scene that felt, odd in the sense that, I knew that to bring a comic element to that scene would make it even more heartbreaking if I find the right way to do it. So that's why I brought in the opera singer, because it's just absurd. I had the feeling that, to sit there and you're not able to talk because there's an opera singer going around the tables, that would be just absolutely horrible. And, you have all these things you want to say, but you can't say them. And also to take the wrong decision in that situation, and you have to sit there with your decision, with that person that you've heard it, and yeah. So and I think I'm glad that you mentioned that scene, because I think it's one of those scenes that kind of points out what I want to do with, how I want to play with the different elements of movie making. To be able to use what could be a very basically it could be a comedy scene, and but it's at the same time super brutal. Yeah.
What in the original story, the way things unfolded with Martin, was she a mirror to him, the fact that she was a model in real life, or was that your creation? Because they seem to be in parallel tracks, like mirrors to each other.
Exactly. Yeah. No, she wasn't a model in real life. That's my invention. My wife used to be a model when she was younger, and I realized how similar that world is to the sports world, and I had this feeling that this film needs that female character, his girlfriend, to be someone who's in the same world or a similar world, a mirrored world, but she have a different approach to it. So yeah, and I had it kind of started with this shot of their feet. I had this picture in my head that
the scene where they're all bruised,
yeah.
Comparing. Well, we're able to side by side see their bruised feet.
Yeah, exactly. And as I had that shot in my head, that is two kids taken out from their normal worlds, where they become commodities on a market, and they have a certain talent or a certain something that they bring with them that other people can capitalize on, but they meet each other as two kids, kind of. And to me that's also a big part of this film, that it's also a film about the firsts. The first time you fall in love, the first time you get drunk, the first time you drive a car, the first time you run into San Zero. It's a kid growing up, and in a way it's the old soldier story. The boy going out to war and coming home as a man.
But it's still the aspect of, and both of them share that they have a dream, and their discipline about their dream. That's still, that through line is through your film. How was it hard for you to balance that aspect with the dark and gritty dissolution aspect of their dream?
At first it was, but then I realized that disillusionment comes from wanting something extremely much, and then realizing you wanted it for the wrong reasons. So, for me, drama comes a lot from when the want and the need kind of collides.
Yeah.
You want something very much, but you need something else. And that was really, the thing with the real Martin Benson. He is not that he was forced into a world of football. He wanted it so much. He wanted it too much, and he wanted it for the absolute wrong reasons.
And what was his reaction to seeing the film, Martin?
It was very shaken. It was intense. He came in to see it when it was almost fully edited, and I was with him in the screening room, and it was really intense. And I think, you know, he's very proud of the film. He told the press in Sweden that he felt that the film is closer to his experience than his own book, which made me very proud, because I've also taken a lot of liberties. But he felt like, and I always had his, you know, he always told me that there's one rule: if you do something, do it because it's good for the film. You know, like make the best film possible, the truest film possible. Then you can change whatever fact you want, which was obviously a great gift, because you need I mean, even when it's based on a true story, you still need to work with all the poetry you can find, all the metaphors you need, and you know, it's. No, so I'm very happy for how extremely generous he's been with his life and his family, obviously. So yeah, it's been great.
On that same vein, you were talking about symbols and metaphors just now. You take us on this psychological journey of the main character, and subliminally you use symbols like the birds on the fence, the scabs on his body that you cut away, focus on. Also, of course, the tigers. You know, can you talk about those figurative comparisons that you use that help tell the story?
Yeah, it felt like a film that was in need of a couple of central metaphors, and of course the animal world. It felt like it was, you know, close to use in the sense that they were in a cage. I mean, the real football, the real soccer players were, you know, they were locked into that house, and they had this kind of. I mean, so the tiger metaphor was there for quite a while. Actually, now I remember that it came from Martin in the sense that I was out having dinner with him, and my phone ran out of battery, and I had to call home to my wife about something, and I borrowed his phone, and he had this super strange background picture, like this is like a guy getting eaten by a tiger, you know. And he had it for many years, just connected to it. And I realized this goes straight into the movie. I didn't know exactly how.
So that wasn't in the book?
No.
That's something, okay.
It's quite far from the book, I must say, because he wrote the book when he was very young. He was still quite afraid of, you know, how it was, how Inter would take it, how the world of soccer would take it. I think it's been good that it took a couple of years to make the movie, so I could get much more from him when he viewed it inside. And that freedom to actually really make it my story as well. I mean, with my temperament and my way of making movies. But I also had the pig screaming very early. So there was it felt like naturally there was something with these animal metaphors that felt, I don't really know why, but it's I saw Johannes Bach-Kuhnke, the actor who you might recognize from Force Majeure by Ruben Östlund, who's playing the agent. I saw him scream like a pig once in Chicago, actually. For the fun of it, and people got very disturbed, and I realized this goes straight into the movie. I didn't know how at the moment, but yeah. But then it became a central metaphor.
The actor that plays Martin, you know, tell us about finding him, and he must have gone through some rigorous training to get into character.
Yeah. He was so thin when I casted him first. That was the only problem. He was amazing. He was very far away from the Martin Benson I saw in front of me. I mean, in my head. But he had this kind of face that you just wanted to look at. He had this kind of intensity and this kind of mix of fragility and brutality. And he had not made many things. I've seen in like very small roles. So I took him along to a personal trainer that usually works with film, transforming bodies for film, and I asked him, is this possible? Can he look like an athlete? And he said, well, it's going to take some time. It took a year. He put on 10 kilos of muscles. But that I would say, I mean, that was part of it. But the biggest part was really normally when you have a young actor doing a role like this, it's them playing themselves. Mm-hmm. I mean, quite often.
Right.
Here, it's a big acting job. I mean, he's transformed like every fiber of his, being. I mean, it's because he's the most pleasant guy. He's super nice, super friendly, very, very witty, easy to be around. And I wanted Martin Benson to have this kind of, there's a distance between him and people. There's a wall. There's something to protect. Mm-hmm. He's not smiling, unless he
rarely.
Yeah.
Until the end.
Yeah, exactly. There's a couple of smiles, and I want when he smiles, you should feel it in your whole body because you're supposed to long for it. Yeah. So I put braces in his mouth just to keep him away from smiling, the actor, and also I had to we had to work on that. His initial responses even because he's not a trained actor. He's very talented, but he's not went to acting school, for example. So we had to work a long time to go away from his natural responses. He was working in a toy store before we were shooting, and sometimes I called him in the morning and said, like, can you try to not smile the first 3 hours? See what happens. You're not allowed to smile the first 3 hours. And then we kind of expanded and, try to avoid answering people for 3 seconds and see what happens. Probably not good for the business, for the toy store. But I think it helped him quite a lot. And I think also the training and also the diet. I mean, he had to eat so much. I mean, I would have loved to. I had to go the opposite way. But it's you have to eat so much when you're putting on muscles. So I think he was really tired of it all at the end. But he also knew something about being an athlete suddenly.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I love so much about your film is the international aspect of it. The fact that he's coming from Sweden and we're surrounded with an Italian culture and we're listening to English as well. Tell us about directing a film about a Swedish character in Italy, and what was that like for you?
It's complicated. I mean, I knew that it needed to be a very international film because it's a very international setting. I mean, they come players from all around the world, and it's also a great opportunity to have that kind of seamlessly. That is not like, oh, we got money from Germany, so now we have to have a German guy. That we actually could be free in the sense that languages goes in and out, and also accents. I wanted
plus the isolation of him being from a foreign country, arriving into a completely different culture.
Yeah, of course, and that was a great storytelling device in a way that I could tell things in his face in the film, but he doesn't understand them, which isolates him a lot more. And that was also a big part of Martin's experience. Coming there, I didn't understand a word, and because you're sold like that as a 16-year-old, and I think, but it was also, I mean, for me as a filmmaker, obviously it was complicated to work with other languages, especially Italian. That I mean, I knew what spaghetti was, but no. But I mean, I think I had to really put in the effort. I had 3 different interpreters that was kind of battling each other on the lines, together with the actors, to really get it like examined. And I had this, I worked quite a lot with the language, but I also wanted to have the specificity of different regions in Italy. Mm-hmm. because I wanted one of the characters to be from Naples and one to be from up north, and to have that kind of flavors, and one's the Rome guy, and that's obviously goes over the head on the international audience, but for the Italian audience, it felt important to be very specific. So I wanted some things to be extremely specific for Sweden. There are like a couple of small things that, for the Swedish audience would be like, okay. That they understand. Also for the Swedish soccer fans, I had like 3 small things, first 10 minutes, just to tell people like, I know this world. Don't worry, And they also go, obviously, lost for the international audience. But it's nice to play with those kind of levels of specificity, I think.
Well, I generally cannot wait for Perfect, which it's in production now, right?
Yeah,
Olivia Wilde is doing the third. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here, Ronnie. Terrific film. Thank you.
Thanks, and thanks for having me.
Yeah,
thank you.
Of course. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, thank you.